So the point is like avoid long meetings and that don't end in sort of action points, I think, and just start making stuff, because just you never know what can come from it. Like shoot stuff on your phone camera and come back and cut it and just sort of pitch it to the client, or just like take sketches and just share it around, because our ideas are generally the ones which will work, and it would just be a shame if we had them and never shared them. So just start making stuff with confidence regardless of where you think it will go. So the next, sort of to give it context, the trend for the web in the 90s was essentially about search. We had a few of these survived, a few haven't, but essentially it was about the search of information and finding stuff quickly. Then last decade was about social networks and things like, obviously Facebook and Twitter are the behemoths, but there's kind of sub networks around which are very successful, and they're still going today. But what this fellow Seth Prybash from Scavenger introduced, or to me, he's been speaking about it for a while, but he introduced this notion of this next decade we're diving into now is going to be about the game layer. Now the game layer is, like, it's not something you build out of bricks and mortar or anything like that. It's just basically standing back and getting a different perspective on sort of human behaviour and why we do stuff. Because ultimately, if you start appreciating that everything is a game, and we are the players, and there are challenges, and there are levels, and there are awards, and the further we progress, the more status we get, then all of a sudden we start understanding there are like these inalienable truths about being a human that we respond to. And there are things like status, which is hugely like massive to us, and it will never change. Like as long as there are humans on this planet, status will mean something. And I think if we see someone pull out a black Amex card, like we respond to that, and that means something culturally. And I think that that is just merely the game layer on top of products. And they've created this exclusivity where it is seeped down and actually sort of means something. And we all ultimately, arguably, strive for the black card. Whether we deep down want to or not, it does mean something. So all of a sudden now we can look at stuff and say it's not working as well as it could, or we think it works and we could make it better. But if we stand back and look at situations like a game and appreciate that there are players and rules and things that can be changed, then all of a sudden we can start solving some pretty interesting problems, or certainly understanding problems. The example that Seth used in the talk was cheating at Princeton, which he was a dropout. This guy's 22 years old, and in his last year he sort of pitched to Princeton that this cheating is like this is just a broken system, and he applied the game layer to cheating in exams. And he said that the students are the players, the rules are the teachers, and when they're watching, you can't look at your hand, and when they're not watching, that's that element of the game where you can get away with it and you can excel. So he said, why don't we just stand back and look at the rules as the teacher, and we remove them from the equation altogether. So now when students walk into the room, there are no teachers. There's just tests on desks, and that's it. But when you enter the room, you sign a document that says, I will not cheat, and if I see someone cheating, I'm as complicit as they are. And the change in that behaviour all of a sudden now means that, you know, there are things that can shift which we've been living with for decades, that now, you know, it is just a really refreshing example of how you can apply it to an old school rule. And according to him, the results have been fantastic. Groupon, another example he used, is essentially just a game plugged into the real world, where we have our incentive, get a half-price gym membership. We have the communal element, which plugs into the status of sharing something cool and worthwhile, but also personally benefiting me. If I get 20 people to invest in this deal, it's activated. So what do? I jump onto Facebook and I share it with the people that I know said that for New Year's they're going to try and get fit. And then you throw in this sort of appointment dynamic of a countdown, where there's a deadline. Now this like appointment dynamic is the same as happy hour. You know, happy hour is a game. We know that we get cheap drinks, and we know that there's going to be people there. And so when we're doing promotions and we're asking communications, we can have call to actions which not only are very clear about what to do, but we can actually trigger motivations which are inherently human, that will actually get greater action and much more passion and enthusiasm from the people, because subconsciously they're driven to get to the point where we ask them to, the next level, or that sort of thing. Another example, oh, well, no, let's add for Groupon, incentive, communal gameplay plus the countdown equals, like, it's a game that works. And if you removed one of them, it wouldn't really work. So I suppose it's just about playing around with them. LinkedIn do it really well with their sort of, your profile is 90% complete. So, and that, like, he mentions that irritates him, and it sort of irritates me as well. I'm at about 60%, but adding another recommendation will bring you to 95%. You know, what does like 95% of my LinkedIn account actually mean? But it's kind of like, we're all suckers for this stuff, and like in the nicest possible way, we can really like manipulate how people behave. An area where he sort of mentioned was it's not working as well as it could. It's just like mobiles giving us the ability to serve up services in relation to where we are at any one time, or location-based services, basically. And there isn't a huge uptake in Australia. I'd say a small percentage of people use Foursquare. People have dabbled in Facebook Places, but if you look at location-based services as a game, essentially the understanding is that you walk into a cafe, then you check in, and then you can get your offer. Whereas if we stand back at that and look at that rule of the vicinity-based checking in, let's loosen those rules and say, why can't we check in to the restaurant tonight? And we can say that Sonia, Simon and I, we're going to be at the Bluebird at 8 o'clock. And we've already checked in there. Or why don't, you know, it's just a matter of actually dissecting things and saying, what can we actually change about the model which works? The fourth, is brands versus stories, and our sort of the role, or the role our brands can play in sort of culture and being sort of relevant. I mean, this example here was kind of amazing in the early 90s when it came out, but we sort of look at it now and we go, you know what, we're a little bit over brands shoehorning their stuff into stories which we'd be kind of into. I think we need to start looking for, like, first of all, look at the brief and see who we need to engage, and then we actually just do a bit of research into those people and say, what are they into and what do they want to see? Like, the example that I'm about to show is like, a brand has basically said that there is cool stuff going on out there, let's just make it better and stand back and sort of just have a pretty gentle nod toward like the role that we've played in it. So just have a look at the role of the brand and have a look at the sort of language used in the script, and then I'll go on to another example.
First musical memory had to be, my mom and pop had like a huge record collection, the early Jackson 5, early album, Commodores, you know, Stop Me if you want to go to the next one.
Yeah, I'm out at Brooklyn. Now I'm down in Tribeca, right next to the Narrow, but I'll be hood forever.
I need to stamp up a little bit though.
I'm all for collaborations, but at the end of the day, it can't be about money.
I think that Jay is like infinitely curious. I think that has everything to do with his longevity.
Yo.
New York. It's my foundation. It's the center of my growth. It's the muse for my art.
So a nice example of like, yes, enormous money was needed, but it's like that story existed before the brief did, and I think that like I'd go and watch that, and I'm probably the people that absolutely want to try and tap, and I think that that's just like one element in our sort of value equation that like will equate to what I perceive as of a brand.